By the time this footage was reviewed, the officer was terminated. His career ended at 28, and a department-wide reckoning exposed years of documented misconduct and supervisory failure. Before we go any further, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing, because cases like this only make sense with full context. It's a quiet Saturday morning on Maple Street in the Riverside neighborhood. A patrol car rolls up behind a man washing his car in his own driveway. The officer approaches with assumptions already formed. Within minutes, a routine response turns into a recorded constitutional violation. What the officer doesn't know is that the homeowner is a decorated police sergeant, his supervisor, off duty in his own neighborhood. That protected authority will be confirmed on camera early, and it won't stop the escalation. The interaction exposes procedural drift, ignored warnings, and a paper trail that reaches beyond a single stop. Internal investigators will later flag civil rights exposure and department-level consequences that cannot be contained. This is a reconstructed reenactment based on a real, publicly reported case. The patrol car idles at the curb on Maple Street. Officer Evan Marshall, 4 years on the job, steps out with his body camera already recording. He's responding to an anonymous call about a suspicious person. No address, no alleged crime, just a description that leans on who the person is, not what they're doing. In the driveway, Sergeant Marcus Reed rinses soap from a dark sedan. It's his day off. Jeans, a gray t-shirt, earbuds in. He doesn't hear the cruiser pull up. He's lived on this block for 5 years. His neighbors know him. The street is quiet, upper middle class, and still. Marshall closes the distance with his hand near his holster. He doesn't pause to observe. He doesn't radio for clarification. He doesn't verify the call. He opens with a demand for identification, framed by a phrase that carries weight. Someone here doesn't look like they belong. Reed removes an earbud and turns, expecting a professional exchange. He answers calmly. He lives here. He's washing his car in his own driveway. The statement should end the encounter. It doesn't. Marshall presses forward. Just cooperate and we'll be done here. The instruction carries no legal basis. No reasonable suspicion is articulated. No crime is named. The officer's posture doesn't change. Reed asks a single question, measured, controlled, whether the officer is really going to proceed this way. The reply doubles down. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Reed identifies himself, his rank, his assignment. He asks for the officer's badge number. The body camera captures the pause that follows. The shift in balance as authority is revealed and ignored. The demand for ID remains. The officer offers no explanation beyond the call. This footage would later be reviewed frame by frame. The exchange continues without arrest, but the misjudgment is already complete. A stop initiated without reasonable suspicion. A demand issued without cause. A protected authority disclosed and dismissed. The record is forming in real time. The situation does not de-escalate. It advances. The camera keeps rolling. Officer Evan Marshall does not disengage. He does not reassess. Instead, he searches for justification after the fact. He repeats that he's responding to a call. When pressed, he can't describe a crime. He can't name suspicious behavior. He can only restate the same phrase, stripped of context and evidence. Sergeant Marcus Reed remains composed. He asks direct questions, one at a time. What specific conduct was reported? What address was provided? What independent observation supported the stop? Each answer falls short. Each pause is recorded. At this point, policy violations are already documented. Each refusal is now a recorded decision. Marshall attempts to reassert control. He frames compliance as the solution, implying the encounter will end if Reed submits. The tactic fails. Cooperation is not a legal standard. Reasonable suspicion is. Marshall still can't articulate it. Reed points out the gaps methodically. Anonymous calls without criminal detail require verification. Presence in a neighborhood is not suspicion. Race is not a factor officers are permitted to rely on. The officer's own words undermine him. The body camera captures them clearly. Marshall's posture shifts again. He softens his tone, then hardens it. He suggests that as officers, they should understand quick judgments. Reed responds that quick judgments based on appearance are still unconstitutional. The distinction is not theoretical. It's operational. The exchange stretches on. Minutes add weight. Dispatch records remain unchecked. No supervisor is requested. The stop continues without lawful grounding. Marshall's attempt to minimize the encounter only deepens the record. The interaction ends with direction, not arrest. Reed instructs Marshall to return to the station and report to the watch commander immediately. A formal complaint will follow. Internal Affairs will be notified. Both recordings, department-issued and personal, are preserved. The officer leaves the scene restrained, but the consequences are now unavoidable. The escalation has crossed a line. Officer Evan Marshall returns to the station in silence. By the time he parks, the outcome is already narrowing. The watch commander is waiting. Word has traveled faster than the cruiser. Marshall is placed on administrative leave. His badge and firearm are collected. Instructions are brief and final. Do not discuss the incident. Internal Affairs opens the file the same day. Investigators begin where the record is cleanest. The body camera. The audio is unambiguous. The opening line. The demand for ID. The absence of any stated crime. The instruction to just cooperate. The moment Sergeant Marcus Reed identifies himself and the officer continues anyway. From this moment on, there was no version of events where this ended quietly. The review widens. Marshall's personnel file is pulled. 9 prior complaints surface, each alleging racial profiling or inappropriate conduct, each previously marked unfounded. Investigators note the consistency. Similar stops, similar language, similar outcomes. The earlier reviews had closed quickly, relying on incident reports without independent verification. Dispatch records are analyzed next. Over 4 years, Marshall responded to suspicious person calls at a significantly higher rate than peers. The majority involved people of color. Patterns emerge, not isolated mistakes. A trend. Investigators interview Reed. He describes the stop calmly. He confirms he was off duty, at home, engaged in ordinary activity. He states that the issue isn't embarrassment. It's judgment. If an officer will profile a supervisor in broad daylight, the risk to civilians without rank is clear. Marshall is interviewed days later. He maintains he was responding to a call. When asked what made the situation suspicious, he repeats the phrase from the call. When asked whether knowing Reed's rank would have changed his approach, he says it probably would have. That answer is logged. The anonymous call is reviewed in full. No address, no criminal behavior, no corroboration, just race and a claim of not belonging. Investigators note that officers are trained to treat such calls with caution, not action. Supervisory reviews from prior years are examined. The former lieutenant's reports show minimal scrutiny. Some complaints were closed without interviews. Others accepted explanations without challenge. The paper trail reveals tolerance where intervention was required. By the end of the 7th week, the findings are consolidated. Unlawful stop, documented racial profiling, pattern of misconduct, supervisory failure. The recommendation is termination. There is no procedural off-ramp left. Officer Evan Marshall is terminated 9 weeks after the incident. His appeal is denied. His law enforcement certification is revoked. At 28, his policing career ends permanently. No criminal charges are filed, but the civil exposure is documented. The stop is ruled a constitutional violation. The department acknowledges liability. Prior complaints that were once dismissed are reopened and sustained. Several result in settlements. The total cost reaches into the millions. The fallout expands beyond one officer. Internal Affairs issues a formal finding of supervisory failure. The former lieutenant who dismissed the earlier complaints is publicly cited in a departmental report for negligent oversight. Though retired, his record is amended. Ceremonial honors are rescinded. His supervision is identified as a contributing factor in multiple rights violations. The department institutes mandatory reforms. All racial profiling complaints are removed from divisional control and routed directly to Internal Affairs. Stop data is audited quarterly for disparity. A full-time analyst is hired to flag patterns before misconduct escalates. Random bodycam audits are implemented. A civilian review board is granted binding authority. Annual in-person bias training becomes mandatory. Sergeant Marcus Reed continues his service. He is later promoted. His recorded stop becomes required viewing in training sessions nationwide. Not as a warning, but as evidence. The footage was public. The decision was permanent.